Welcome back to ILTV on the Hour. I'm David Matlin, coming to you live this time from Israel with all the top headlines from across the region. Let's recap the latest and get into it. Now, Iran has fired more than a dozen missiles and drones at the United Arab Emirates and claims to have attacked other shipping vessels and U.S. warships, all in the last day, marking a sharp escalation and the first such attacks all since a 2-week ceasefire was declared April 8th. But now, with tensions escalating around the Strait of Hormuz again, the threat of a return to open war seems imminent. And the UAE says that its air defenses intercepted many of the attacks, but at least one drone strike there sparked a fire at a major oil facility, wounding 3 people. Now, residents of the Emirates have been told to stay close to shelter over the coming days. Some commercial flights were even forced to turn around midair, and schools have been put back on day-to-day standby. Now, a series of very interesting reports have emerged, appearing to confirm that the IDF has deployed the Iron Dome and other top-tier defense equipment, along with the Israeli soldiers, to operate them in the United Arab Emirates. It's a remarkable first under the Abraham Accords and highly significant sign of the tight security ties and the growing cooperation between Israel and our new Gulf allies. Meanwhile, the U.S. military says it's engaged Iranian forces in the Strait of Hormuz, destroying the IRGC's small attack boats and intercepting missiles that are targeting ships. President Trump has repeatedly warned that any attack on any U.S. vessel would be met with overwhelming force, which, of course, leads us to the moment we're in, and the heavy uncertainty, especially hanging over us in Israel. But with most of the world's focus on the economic impact of the standoff, in his latest comments, President Trump took on the concerns around oil prices and the downward trend in the polls.
Everybody was wrong. They thought that energy would be at $300, right? $300 a barrel, and it's like at 100. And I think going down, and I see it going down very substantially when this is over, Chris. And I think very rapidly too, at levels that you've never seen, because there's a lot of energy out there. Of ships all over the world that are loaded up with it. They can't do much with it because they got kidnapped by a pretty evil place, but we're taking care of it. It's interesting. I did a poll on the war with Iran, and they said only 32% of the people like it. Well, I don't like it, and I don't like war at all, but we're equipped better than it. We have the greatest military in the world. You saw what happened with Venezuela. You see what happens with everything. But they said 32% of the people are against President Trump. Well, when you explain it, like, is it okay for Iran to have a nuclear weapon? It wouldn't be 32%. But even if you said that, there'd be a 32% because the polls are fake. I mean, they're totally fake. And
now, Israel, here, we remain on high alert given the renewed Iranian attacks in the Gulf and ongoing background rhetoric from Tehran, essentially demanding that the U.S. and Israel surrender and admit defeat. Now, Israeli defense officials say what is apparent to all here, that if Iran does not back down from their current positions, a return to open war is increasingly likely. Now, after yesterday's announcement from President Trump on the launch of so-called Project Freedom to escort ships through the contested strait, he warned that any Iranian interference, which has already happened, will be met with force. Israeli officials say the key question is how Iran will continue to act. Despite the Iranians' attacks on the UAE, IDF officials say there's no change to Israel's home front guidelines. That's again as of this hour. According to officials, the IDF is following the situation and is at the quote-unquote highest level of readiness, as they put it. Now, the home front command says it will update the public immediately if conditions change. But while some warn of a full return to war, others argue Iran's response so far appears calculated and limited. And despite the ceasefire officially in place with Iran and Lebanon, the war in the north with Hezbollah continues to intensify by the day. Another series of attacks targeted Israel's frontline troops overnight, and the IDF continues to respond and work to neutralize the terror group's threats near the border, finding and destroying tunnel networks, rocket arsenals, anti-tank missiles, and other weapons and ammunition, measured in tonnage. Now, the IDF says it hit more than 15 Hezbollah targets just over the last 24 hours. But the Iranian proxy terror group is making persistent efforts to derail any diplomacy between Jerusalem and their political rivals in Beirut. Now, an Israeli soldier was lightly wounded in an explosive drone attack, and 2 soldiers were moderately wounded in a clash with Hezbollah gunmen. Nonetheless, the diplomatic channels remain open, with U.S.-mediated talks continuing, though some Israeli officials are starting to sound pessimistic, arguing that the Lebanese government cannot or is not willing to disarm Hezbollah. Reports indicate a possible 3rd round of talks will be held in Washington this week between the Israeli ambassador and his Lebanese counterpart. Now, that's Lebanese President Joseph Aoun says that any meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu is not possible at this stage, stressing that a security agreement and an end to Israeli strikes are required first. Importantly, the Lebanese president added that there is, quote-unquote, no turning back from the negotiating process, while calling for national unity and continued diplomacy. That's despite all of the ongoing tensions. Now, with all that on the table, in this hour, we're joined first by IDF Reserve Brigadier General Nitzan Nouriel, is the former head of the National Security Council as well. So, Nitzan, always enlightening to have you with us. And I know another large part of your background is working closely with the United States forces. I know for many years you organized the Juniper Cobra sort of joint training operation. So you have a real insight to the way that Israel cooperates, with the U.S. and the region, CENTCOM. Look, let's start about the big picture, though. By targeting the United Arab Emirates, Iran appears to be signaling escalation without risking a direct strike on Israel, perhaps, that could trigger a much broader military response. Is that accurate? Might Iran start only targeting Israel and Gulf allies right now, sort of not the U.S. directly? Would that put Israel in a predicament if President Trump doesn't want to yet return to any direct action?
Good afternoon. Yes, you're absolutely right. They don't want to move from 0 to 100 within a day or with few hours. So they start step by step. The Emirates and Oman are the first. I believe that by the next few days, in case of escalation, as I see it, it's behind the corner. They will also launch missiles for the state of Israel, and Israel will respond. And we'll be back into kind of a military clash until the Iranian regime will understand that they need to change directions. They need to take different decisions. My personal assumption is that they will not be able to do it. And therefore, the overall pressure by United States, by Israel, by the Gulf state, will become stronger in order to reach a regime change, because the current regime is not going to change directions. And therefore, if you want to achieve something, you need to push forward into a regime change.
Look, militarily speaking, many in Israel, I think, from my feeling, is that the longer the ceasefire persists, the worse it is for us here. In other words, the enemies are regrouping, they're under less pressure, they're reorganizing from all that they learned from the 6 weeks of open attacks. Should we be concerned here from the status quo?
Yes, we have to be concerned because all the 3 fronts are actually still open. Yeah. We don't have solutions in Gaza, we don't have solutions in Lebanon, and obviously we still with open fire in Iran. And without a strong mechanism, I believe, firstly, take Iran out of the game. Those 3 fronts will stay open, and the status quo is not good for us. Hamas regain power. Hezbollah still fighting for his life and create casualties. And obviously, the Iranians are gaining more power, and they are trying to achieve some achievements, basically to survive. And all those things are not good for us.
Look, on Hezbollah in particular, they appear more directly tied to the IRGC than ever before. This is a key demand of the Iranians was to leave, Hezbollah alone. Now, how much lateral room do we have right now as Israel to operate against Hezbollah in this situation? Do we have our hands tied, in some ways by President Trump right now?
Unfortunately, the answer is yes. We are not running the show. The show is fully monitored by the Pentagon, by the White House. And therefore, even though we know for sure that Hezbollah still kicking, still create damage, we cannot really launch and use all the power we have. It's very much connected into the overall situation in Iran. All of us, the Israelis and the Americans, truly believe that if Iran leave the game, Hezbollah will collapse.
Yeah.
As long as Iran stay on her leg, Hezbollah believe that he can still fight. This is the connection between the front. You cannot really separate between them. And yes, as you said, Israel are not fully operate against Hezbollah in Lebanon.
Look, on the actual fight, does the IDF appear to be properly equipped, have the right tactics for this moment of what's become again guerrilla warfare from Hezbollah? We see the effectiveness of the drones, for example.
The new techniques to use the drones by the fabric cable create few challenges. I believe that within few days we will come with a holistic solution, some procedures, some technical obstacle, and some other detection and interceptors. So it will be another threat which we are facing. And we all know that during a combat, during a war, there are many threats. That's going to be another one. And as I said, I'm sure that we will come with a holistic solution against that threat as well.
If I can ask you the big question, I guess, what do you expect the next steps to be by the U.S. and Israel in this situation?
I need to add some political aspect into the picture, because it's not only a question of using the military or using ammunition or using some other tactics. If I can recommend the US administration as well as the Israeli government, I would put on the table kind of a request to the Saudis. Take the lead and create kind of a regional conference in order to solve the Lebanese-Syria-Israel conflict. They can do it. They have enough money. They are in the right side of the players. They support Syria. They support the current regime in Lebanon. And I believe that by 10 years plan, we can come with a solution that will create more stability, will give the Saudis a better position to lead the entire Sunnis world, and it will affect Gaza as well. Without a diplomatic horizon, it will be very tough to achieve only military achievements.
Yeah, no doubt that political horizon necessary. Like you bring up the Gulf countries here, the Saudis in particular. I found these reports really intriguing about what appears to be the IDF deploying air defenses and soldiers into the Emirates, possibly wider parts of the Gulf right now. How significant is that? Obviously, it's a good sign of where things are going on ties between the countries. But that, aside from Jordan, I mean, you probably know a lot more than I do about this, but I don't think we've seen these kind of deployments of Israeli troops in any of these neighboring or friendly Arab countries perhaps ever before.
You're absolutely right. It is a very dramatic step. Provide us some hope that by the next future, we will tie our connections with all the Gulf states, because we together, Israel and those states, understood lately that Iran is the threat, Iran is the enemy. And if you want to be able to deal with that enemy, you need to create some coalitions tied. And the case of Israel and the Emirates, it's an example that can create better atmosphere for the rest of the state. It is very unique to have an Israeli unit deployed overseas, in that case into the Emirates. And I hope that this is a beginning of something larger that will provide better stability to the region.
I share your optimism there. Absolutely. This caught my attention as certainly significant and not just deployed elsewhere, but under fire, taking, risks right there. Along those lines, there's this risk I want to get your thoughts on the risks of losing allies in the U.S., in the West, over the war in particular right now. It appears that the price of this Western support throughout the last 3 years might have been worth the apparent gains that we've made with our Arab neighbors, fighting the region's greatest menace, as we highlight here with the Emirates and elsewhere. Is that a way to look at the situation?
Yes, and the fact that war taking place more than 2.5 years create very tough environment and atmosphere against us. We used to have very short wars, so just after the war you can get kind of a ceasefire or any type of different agreements, and then create re-establishing relationship and processes, and because of that, war is very long and we are not there yet. We are losing friends. Specifically, I'm very much concerned about Turkey. Specifically, I'm very much concerned about the overall atmosphere in Europe and also United States. So this is the Israeli main interest, to come with initiatives to close those wars. Otherwise, it will be even tougher.
I'll get you out of here on this, Nitzan, on the viability, what you think the viability is right now of maintaining. We talked about the dangers, for Israel and the status quo, but the viability of the U.S. continuing this blockade right now for, let's say, weeks to come, despite these Iranian provocations right now. How long do you think this situation can hold in the Hormuz?
Practically and physically, they can do it forever. But I believe that President Trump already lost his patience, and we are about to see a military clash within very, very short period. I can take the guess of very few days.
Nitzan Nuriel, always eye-opening. Appreciate your time with us. Thanks so much.
Thank you, and take care. Bye-bye.
And we shift our focus a bit here. Much more analysis, joined now by another guest, Ahmed Kuzai. He's a political consultant joining us from Bahrain. So really appreciate your time with us here. And like the Gulf, this ongoing focal point. First, I really have to say, from sitting here in Israel, we have huge respect and sympathy for the plight of the people in Bahrain, really all the Gulf right now, facing so many attacks from Iran. Something we understand and, of course, feel a real solidarity with you. From the ground here, we're with you as the bottom line. If you can take on this first question, really, why is Iran now resuming its attacks on Gulf countries?
First of all, your words are highly appreciated, and it means a lot to us from people who have been resilient for all those years and know exactly what we're going through right now. Yeah. So thank you for that. As for the Iranians, nobody knows the Iranians more than us and Israel today. And that says it all, especially when it comes to the Abraham Accords. I agree with your guest earlier regarding his speculation of how long this will be standing. And from the ground here, we could tell that no negotiation will hold. It won't last forever. The Iranians are masters of twisting truths, buying time, and basically playing things in their favor. And that's exactly what they've done with this ceasefire. It's a fragile one, and they've used it for their own good, recalibrating and basically rebuilding their strength in order for them to come back and hit again. And we've seen that happening yesterday.
Look, tell us about how the people in Bahrain, and other neighboring countries, perhaps, if you can speak by that, targeted by Iran, how are they feeling right now, or looking at the situation almost 1 month, into this 2-week ceasefire that as it's unraveling?
Yeah. First of all, we have to understand that in the Gulf, we have always been peaceful, especially when it comes to Iran, and especially when it comes to us in Bahrain towards Iran, since they are an existential threat for us here. They've been claiming our land as their own for a long time, and they have basically planted proxies, terrorist attacks, and lots of other things that many people know about. So for us, during the war, I'm not going to lie, it was scary. Yet when the ceasefire basically started taking place, yes, it was, a piece of fresh air. Yet now we can tell that nobody can stay in purgatory for a long time. It's either we continue the war or we stop. Yet, how people feel is that if we stop now and the United States take its troops back to the United States, we will be left to face Iran alone. So either fight another war and finish it all at once, or give it some time and another war would be inevitable. We will have to fight another war. So why not finish it all at once and get it over with?
I think that's a shared sentiment here. I mean, as you mentioned here, trillions of dollars at stake in international trade, an existential threat to your country, to the Emirates, the Saudis, Kuwait, more, the GCC. Really concerned, I think, you're right, that the U.S. will walk away, still leaving us all to deal with the IRGC remnants. But look, for a long time now, we've seen the Gulf, the GCC, okay, I'll summarize these countries like that, act and talk like there would be a new offensive front coming from them, that these countries would form some kind of, alliance firmly standing alongside the U.S. I believe that they should be standing firmly alongside the U.S. in this moment, but President Trump has appeared to keep all the cards to his chest. It's not known how much he's consulting with any of the allies right now, leaving many frustrated, feeling sidelined, giving him maximum maneuverability. But is this lack of an open coalition, harming the war effort?
I agree with you, and it's not just harming it, it's putting it in a dark place where nobody knows where is it now and where is it going in the future. That's why I can clearly see that there's an unnamed alliance forming over the past 2 weeks, especially with Israel sending its people and the Iron Dome to the United Arab Emirates in a visible way, especially that the Gulf states were bombarded by the Iranians under the claims and the pretenses that Israel and the United States are fighting them from our lands. I mean, be it. We're already being bombed for it. Why not make it true and then take it from there? So I think that's a start for a new alliance in the region where the broader pro-peace camp is fighting back and basically finishing the job rather than keeping it hanging for a longer time.
Well, certainly we agree on all these points. What do you think about, how realistic are the plans that some of them we see for pipelines going westward, for other routes, to avoid Iranian interference for shipping? Are these temporary sort of, ideas, or is there something real in that?
It's momentarily, it's options. The Gulf states are studying more options right now, especially with the Petroline proving to be very beneficial after all these years. I remember when I was a kid and it was just built and many people were making fun of it. Who's laughing now? Yet, on the other hand, every plan will be put today should be just a contingency plan for what could happen later on. Yet there's no avoiding the fact that the Strait of Hormuz should be reopened, especially that if things keep going the way they are, we have to agree that Iran won't stop here and will take it another step further to as well block the Bab al-Mandab Strait, which is controlled somehow or could be controlled by the Houthis. And on the Sudanese side, since both places are somehow infiltrated by the Iranians. That's why we can never leave it there. We could study options. We could build new pipelines. Yet the main passages are these both straits should be free from the Iranians.
Look, I don't know if you're willing to comment on this and discuss this, a wider picture around the region, but from what I understand, there are some deep disappointments right now in Egypt in particular. Look, they're the paid defender of the Arab League and not appearing to be very relevant in this war or for the stability of the region. Can you comment on, how, things like the Arab League, how the regional perspective is shifting under the strain of this conflict?
Amidst the war, we all remember how the leaders of the Gulf states were basically shocked. I'm not going to say disappointed. I'm going to say somehow shocked by how most of the Arab and Muslim allies in the region behaved, especially that most of them lived off our goodwill for a long time, including the Arab League.
Yeah.
From there, I remember the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia stating clearly that after the war there'll be lots of changes, and then from there we've been hearing lots of rumors and I'm not going to say conflicted statements, but some unclear statements about how the Gulf states would behave towards the Arab League, how they basically reposition and rewrite their agreements with the wider Arab and Muslim world. And that's why I said earlier that I can see that there's a new alliance forming. Alliance being formed on basically what works for us and what doesn't. Because that showed clearly who's a friend and who's a foe. And I don't think it's a time for us to keep any foe as close as they were before.
Do you think it's fear-based? I mean, we're seeing Egypt, say Pakistan, Turkey, very large Muslim countries, enormous armies, capabilities, who should be, in the opinion of many, more involved in sort of the stabilizing effort here against the extremists. But these are energy-dependent countries, big energy-dependent countries with massive militaries that are largely running the show behind the scenes. Does that define the divide we're seeing right now, somewhat these energy-dependent versus energy-exporting countries, essentially?
Yes and no, but I'll add another point to that. In order for these countries to mobilize any of their basically military pieces or their soldiers, they need more budgets, which they can't afford at the moment. Some of these countries can't afford to fly jets for more than 24 hours. Others can't pay the salaries of the soldiers. So in order for them to mobilize them, they'll need to be paid. And that's why I said earlier that the Gulf states have to recalibrate how they deal with other countries and how they treat other countries. Since the war erupted, we didn't see any serious effort by any of the countries you mentioned to help or to assist or even to stabilize the region.
Look, I think the bottom line point, and maybe we end on this, is Israel has shown up in a different way in this conflict, obviously, than any of these other massive, Muslim countries in the region here, part of the Arab League, elsewhere, all the ones we've discussed right now. And now with the deployment, at least according to reports of Israeli soldiers on the ground here, is this a positive move? We talk about the loss of our Western allies, the criticism we're getting in the West over this. Here in Israel, we like to believe that we're making friends in the neighborhood here with our Arab neighbors through this conflict, maybe at the price of Western support temporarily. Is that the path that we're on, or at least is that the trend that we're seeing here?
As we can see, over the past 5 years, the West in total is reshaping itself, if that's a term we could use here. Over the past 20 years, many Western countries leaned a bit towards the left, and now most of the Western countries are leaning back towards the right. I think whenever they find their middle ground, they'll come around this idea. Nobody can go around the idea of a peaceful Middle East where Israel is not an outcast. It's a weird idea for many, but I think people should live up to the reality that we're facing today, that the possibility of Iran being the public enemy number one more than Israel is an idea that many don't want to accept, but they will have to find their peace with it, and then from there come around.
Ahmed, encouraging conversation with you. I appreciate your candidness, your openness to all the issues here. Nothing taboo. Thank you for joining us, and stay safe out there in Bahrain.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Ending on a bit of a light note here, as we can. It was annual Lag BaOmer celebrations across Israel. They're marked by some of the largest crowds we've seen in months, and the traditional festive bonfires, of course. That's despite tensions over security restrictions and under the threat of rocket fire from Hezbollah. Thousands of ultra-Orthodox revelers came out to Mount Meron, the center of the yearly celebrations, near Tzfat in the north, though they had to push past police barriers in some places aimed at keeping these crowds small, again, over safety concerns. But authorities tried to find the balance between the deeply rooted religious traditions and the heightened threats. And across the country, we can happily report that families and communities were able to mark the holiday in relative peace. That is a wrap for this edition of ILTV on the Hour. I'm coming to you live from Israel, the heart of the Middle East. We're here every hour on the hour with the latest breaking news, in-depth reports, exclusive insights, and the stories shaping the region. I'm David Matlin. Thanks for watching.